Welcome to Kitchen Table Life with Nancy and Charity, a podcast where friends gather to spill the coffee. We talk practical truth about life's challenges, loving well, and leading strong.
Come on, friends, and gather round.
Letting go is often difficult. We hold on because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or maybe we don't want to disappoint somebody. Sometimes we hold on to things because we use them to cope or find comfort. Maybe they even hold sentimental value to us. But everything we hold on to costs us something. In this episode, we are asking ourselves the question, what are you holding on to that you need to let go of?
Those are some good questions, Nancy.
They are, but they always seem to be the hard questions too, because when somebody asks a question like, so Charity, what are you holding on to that you need to let go of? Immediately, four things surface to your brain, and you're like, shh, get down.
Or you have that, I don't know. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean I'm holding on to something? Because now I'm holding on to something.
Yeah, or I have everything I need. I have everything I have. I need. It's all I need it all.
Right.
And that's not reality, right? I was listening to a sermon one time, and he was actually talking about relationships and other things, but he said when you're looking around, he said a great way to measure is would you save it in a fire?
Oh, that's a great question.
And I mean, for people or for stuff. Do you know what I
Right.
mean? And I'm not saying leave people on fire, so let's not hear what I'm not saying. But it's like what is so important that you would rush to save it in the event of an emergency, and I went home and immediately went, I have stuff right now sitting on shelves, on bookshelves and boxes. I'm having to steward this stuff. It's costing me my time. Now, it might be a little trinket, but if I've got to dust it, I've got to move it, I've got to wash it. Because we've moved a lot over the past number of years, it's like I've got to pack it and unpack it and repack it and unpack it again. And so it all costs something in my life. And people are no different, right?
Right.
There are people who are costing me on a regular basis. And I'm giving, 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 giving. And they're not people that actually belong in my life.
Mm,
I have created something in me that says I need to fix, I need to repair, I need to help. It's my responsibility before I ever stopped and said, Lord, is this a relationship you want me to have?
right. And I think sometimes it just brings to mind the thought of when is it time to let something go? Because sometimes friendships
Yeah.
are for a season, like you should always be friendly, but sometimes you can only invest so much into a friendship before you have to like just let it take its natural course. Like,
Well, I absolutely agree. And I think we get ourselves into, especially as Christians, right? When you decide you're going to sever a relationship, it doesn't have to be that dramatic.
no,
But we start to think, well, I wouldn't be a very good Christian if I didn't, if I don't, if, but there's only so much time. There's only 24 hours in a day and 365 days in a year. I can personally only spread myself, so thin as far as meeting with people and engaging with people. And it's so funny because our pastor was talking not too long ago about the importance of making sure that you're being social, because sometimes in church we get stuck in the administrative, or we get stuck in the having to do certain things that we forget to just be with people.
right.
And I said, the Lord helped me fix this a number of years ago, because there was a minister that had come through the church we were at, and he said, you should never ever do ministry alone.
Hmm.
You should never do ministry alone, because either you're bringing somebody up, you're bringing somebody along, or maybe they're showing you something and bringing you up. And so, and that became very real for us, because for about a 3-year period, we literally invested our blood, sweat, tears, finances, nearly our marriage and children into this one church. And so if you wanted time with me, it was always going to be church time. And so if you want to, if you called me and said, "Hey Nancy, are you available?" I'd be like, "I'm going to make some rounds at the hospital, but if you want to come."
Right.
And so many of my greatest friendships that I even have today were from people who went church shopping for church supplies and or went to the hospital. Now we did fun stuff afterwards. It's not like as stuffy as it sounds. We went to lunch, maybe we went and caught a movie afterwards. But and without them coming alongside in that season, that's the only way it would have happened. But there are some people who were my friends in that time, not my friends anymore.
Mm. Well, I've
And
always heard that it's important to be friendly to everyone, but not everyone can be your close friend.
well, that's the truth. And we're going to get a little off topic here for a
That's okay.
second, but I struggle with that term myself.
Yeah.
Friends. So I have levels of friends. There's like the friends that know where the bodies are buried, and then good friends who know a lot. And then I have friends who are, I expect when I text them that I need them to pray that they're going to call fire down from heaven for me.
Right.
Like, and now you could be in more than one category, right? You could be
Right.
a great friend, but also be calling fire down from heaven. But because, first of all, not everybody's equipped to pray for me, you know,
Right.
I pray some big, audacious prayers, and some people don't have the faith to pay their rent, let alone pray. And that's not a condemnation. We're all in our own space. They're just, those aren't people that I would call to pray for me. And so, anyway, all that to say, if I had tried to keep everyone that I had ever spent time with that was in some level of friend zone, I would be doing nothing else. And so
Right.
there's a natural process of, you know, I don't like the term weeding out, but I think maybe evaluating who the appropriate person is to be in my life in this season.
Hmm.
And I have friends too. I don't know about you, but they kind of ebb and flow out of the river that is me.
Right.
Some seasons they're there and some seasons they're not. And it's not personal. They don't have
Right.
anything wrong with me. Just life got crazy, but we pop back together, very quickly when they come back in, and we hang for a little bit and then they got to go do their thing. It's
Yeah.
okay.
It's like and I know you've met her. You guys were in my wedding, but Bethany, I've known Bethany since I was 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had a friendship ever since then. And there are times that we talk to each other a lot. And
Yeah.
then there are times that go months and months and months and months.
Mm-hmm.
But when I talk to her again, it's like I talked to her yesterday.
Yeah.
She's not any less of a friend. She's a dear friend.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, and I think we got stuck on friends, but it's no different with stuff.
yeah.
And we can talk about physical stuff. We can talk about influences. We could go as far as social media, television programs, whatever. But everything is give and take. And
Right.
so it's either taking from us or it's giving to us. It's either giving positive or taking positive, or, you can look at just about anything. But for me, when I had heard that sermon, it caused me to get rid of a lot of stuff in my house because
Yeah.
I realized that it was taking up too much time. I kind of felt like I had the friend thing under control, but I started to get rid of just items I had collected. But what I learned as I was going through these items was I had held on to them just in case
Hmm.
because I had experienced lack.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the boundaries that I had created was I was going to care for things well,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was going to keep them because one day I might need them. And that led to a lot of stuff. I mean, it wasn't a hoarder or anything. As you know, all my stuff's in boxes with labels. I'm a little
Oh,
bit
I
creepy,
know.
different spectrum. But it was still too much stuff. My kids were almost graduating. They were all in junior high or high school, and I was still holding on to boxes and boxes of crayons. And I had to come to this place where I said, all right, Lord, you gave this to me, but I'm going to give it to somebody else who can use it right now that maybe is praying for it.
Right.
And in the meantime, if I do need this, I believe you're going to supply my need. Kind of like what we had talked about last month in our podcast. In my own natural ability, I was trying to create a system that would protect me.
Right.
But sometimes what we do is we build boundaries that we don't evaluate. And when we don't evaluate boundaries, we turn around one day and they've become the very prison that's holding us.
I recently had to tell someone, and this wasn't a bad thing. They were just asking about what craft stores are in our area. And I said, well, I said, we have this and this and this. I said, but I'm not currently stocking up on any crafting supplies. And they said, you're not? I'm like, nope. I'm like, I have enough. I have my little cupboard, and that's where I keep them. And unless I'm working on something specifically that I need a supply for, I'm not storing any more craft supplies because they're
Hmm.
not being used.
Yeah.
I don't want to waste my space or waste money on something that's not going to be used. It has no purpose at the moment.
Yeah. And boy, clearance will get you.
Oh my gosh, yes, it does.
But we also do this we've talked about friends and people, we've talked about stuff, but we also do this with events.
Mm-hmm.
We start to shuffle as many events into our calendar as we can. And when we do that, we become, well, I say we. I'm really, let's just be real, me.
Uh,
I then become overwhelmed because I'm overscheduled. There's no deep breath for me.
right.
There's no opportunity for me to abide in the vine, so to speak, because, and not that I'm not reading my Bible or listening to sermons, but there's no time to just sit and soak, I guess is probably the best way to put it. And I absolutely, you guys have heard me talk about him before. I love Bob Goff. And in his most recent devotional called Catching Whimsy, he talks about that he keeps a hole in his left pocket. And that's where he puts the things that don't have to stay. And so he said, if somebody gives me something and I shouldn't keep it, I put it in my left pocket. And I love that analogy. But he also talks about in one of his books that he writes that he quits every Thursday.
Okay.
And I was like, what? You quit every, what? And what he does is he'll make a list of the things that he's been doing like consistently,
Hmm.
and he'll find one to quit.
Huh.
What have I been doing that I no longer need to do? And we all do this, right? Like, like don't stop taking your medicine on Thursday, right? Like that's not the day to quit.
Not that kind of quitting, people.
Right. But there are things that we do that become a habit, that become a tradition. And oh my goodness, is the church good for this one? So and it becomes something that has to happen. And if you stop it, the world shatters and people, there's crying and screaming and gnashing of teeth. And no, I'm kidding, kidding, sort of. So, but he makes this list. This is him personally, and he quits something every Thursday so that he's maintaining margin in his life is what he's really doing.
Right.
And I absolutely adore this man. Like I feel like I've become a better human because Bob Goff exists, quite honest.
No.
So if you've never read any of his material, like just whatever it is, whatever he's written, just read that. Because he loves well, but he creates boundaries well.
Yeah.
But he's involved in like so much.
Well, he can only be involved in so much, probably because he creates good boundaries.
Yeah.
You have to. Better boundaries make better people.
Yes, I agree. 100% agree. And whether we're talking friends, whether we're talking, relationships in general, stuff in our house or events we're committing to, it all belongs to God.
It really does. So recently, Nancy, we had a tornado. I always get them back mixed up. Watch or warning. I don't know. One is like you have everything to make tacos, and the other one's the tacos coming at your face. So whichever one, like that's how I try to remember it. I can never keep them straight. But so one is you have everything to make a tornado, and the other one is the tornado is coming. And that's how I remember it. But anyways, to make a long story short, we're hunkered down in the laundry room with the dogs and a mattress, and I'm laying there thinking, if my house blows apart, heaven forbid, I have a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't shredded yet. Like, and not bad stuff, but like bank statements, like stuff with important information on them, and I'm going, probably need to take care of that because
Yeah.
if my house goes, they're gonna be flying all over and all that. Keep your information safe. I'm like, it'll be everywhere. Like people could steal my identity if they really wanted, if my house blew apart.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's fix that. And so it was kind of like a reminder of being a good steward of my information. You know, like God's asking us to be good stewards in everything, our time, our talent, our treasure, and our identity.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I think you make a very good point. I think that's one of those things that it's a little thing that we haven't put on the list to do and keep doing, and it becomes crazy. It's one of those things that we put off, we put off, we put off, we put off. And, but the cost, whether you're letting it come in or you're letting it leave, it all has a cost.
right,
You know, even when we talk about people, if you allow people to leave your life, it comes at a cost.
right.
There's still grief, there's still sadness. I mean, I lost a lifelong friend. Um, I don't know, I guess it was 9 years ago. No, six, yeah, about 9 years ago now. But we'd been friends since we were in junior high. And she just made some significant life choices that caused us to go on separate paths. But the grief of that loss was great and stayed with me for several years. I'm not talking like I cried myself to sleep every night or anything, but
Right.
it impacted me, I guess is what I'm saying. So when we talk about the need to create boundaries and create margin and evaluate what needs to stay and what needs to go, it's not as black and white as that, right?
Right.
There's a lot of emotion that goes into it, but not to lean too heavily on our last podcast, but one of the things I mentioned was when God directs you to do something, are you obedient and willing or just obedient? Because he needs
Right.
both.
He does.
And so I've had to continue to work to get to a place to say, God, am I doing what you would have me to do? And even Proverbs tells us in 3:9, honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first produce of your entire harvest. Over in Second Corinthians chapter 9, 6-7, it says, remember this, the person who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. The person who sows generously will also reap generously. So each person should do as he's decided in his heart, not reluctantly and out of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. Now, both of these verses are talking more about, giving financially. We can talk about tithe, offering, that kind of thing, but it's no different. The principles of sowing and reaping go much deeper than that in the kingdom. And so if I sow generosity, I'm going to reap that. If I
Right.
sow kindness to you, I'm going to reap that. Now, it's not to say you don't run across a crazy person. You may sow kindness and not reap kindness, but the overall principle of what happens in God's kingdom is everything is based on sowing and reaping. But if I do not sow time in a way that allows me to have margin, there's no ability for me to reap.
Well, this reminds me of the warning that we're not supposed to cast our pearls before swine. So you're not going to, you have your, let's say your pearls are your time, your talent, and your treasure.
Hmm.
I'm not just going to throw them at something that is not going to grow, benefit, encourage, develop your time, your talent, or your treasure. So, if we're so like, for instance, if you're sowing kindness, it says you might not be, you could sow kindness and not receive kindness. You have to ask yourself, am I sowing kindness in the wrong spot?
Yeah. But we do it all the time, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes we have created personal rules based on our own fleshly desires because we want to be perceived a certain kind of way. And so we will endure negativity longer than we should. And I got to stop there because I will go off on a whole tangent over here. There's only so much time. So, but I want to take us back to sowing and reaping for just a minute. If we are not sowing and creating that space, there's no reaping. It's like your hands are so full with all the stuff you're holding on to.
Right.
And so I've got all my friends here, I've got all my money here, I've got all my events thing here. And if I'm not willing to create space, then where is God going to pour the next opportunity that I'm praying for?
Right. Well, if you want to have, a healthy balance in anything, whether it be church, friends, family, you have to create space for that
Mhm.
thing. You have to create space for your family. You have to create your space for church. It's about balance, it's about boundaries. And I don't know. And I like that we're talking about letting things go
Yeah.
because sometimes we pile it on. Like you say, you pile it on, you bring it, you pile it on, and you do have to let things go. And as a good leader, and I think you mentioned this earlier, we have to train. It might have been when we were talking amongst ourselves and not on the podcast, but to be a good leader, you teach what you know to someone else and you bring them up and then you pass it off. And because you can't, one person cannot know and do everything. And we have to create space for people to come alongside us and to teach them and to learn and then move on.
Well, and I think ultimately we have to remember none of it's ours.
Right. It all belongs to God.
Right. The time is not ours. The friendships are not ours. I mean, you know what I'm saying when I
I
say
know what
that.
you mean.
The money is not ours. The stuff we have in our house is not ours. Everything we have comes from God. Psalm 50:10 and 12 says, "For all the animals of the forest are mine. I own the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird on the mountains, and all the animals of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world is mine and everything in it." Like God's like, I'm not going to be asking you for cheese and crackers, okay? Because if I'm hungry, I own it. I
Right.
own it. But I let you steward it. And what I think is important for us as Christians to remember as we're talking just about all these things is we're not our own. We
Right.
were bought and paid for with a price. And so we don't get to like we get to be our own person as far as who God created us to be, but we're stewarding this life.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I used to tell people that I don't want to just live my life. I want to spend my life.
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave nothing out there until I was reading this book that gave me a whole new word. And I was like, I want to invest my life, right? Because an investment is an expectation of a return.
Right.
And so I don't want to give of my time, my talent, my treasure, whether that's relationships or stuff or a job or whatever. I don't want to invest there if there's not an expectation that I'll reap a harvest. If somebody is hateful towards me, I am not it's not, and sometimes I got to pull myself back, right? Because we want to fix it, we internalize. I am not reaping here. It's
Right.
not good soil. I need to walk away. I need to walk away. This life is not mine. This stuff is not mine. This
Right.
time is not mine. It's all the Lord's.
And that's just when you're kind, but you don't have to stay there. You
That's
know,
right.
it's so important, people.
What I hope we all walk away with is none of this is ours. It all belongs to God, but at the same time, recognizing that, we also recognize that there's no situation, there's no circumstance, no relationship, no friendship, no time, no talent, no treasure that is too small for God. He's in it all, He owns it all. And we have to rest in that because it all belongs to Him anyway.
Until next time, be sure to like, share, and follow us on social media.
And keep it real at the kitchen table.